JJ, how impressed or not were you by that fixture, Holland versus, or Netherlands, I should say more correctly, versus Japan?
Really impressed. I think that definitely ranks as probably my favourite game of the World Cup so far. I think we've already had a good number of storylines, but this for me felt like the most absorbing encounter. I think on the basis of how the game played out, it was a fair result. I think Japan were definitely good value for their late equaliser. I don't feel that the Dutch did enough to merit the victory. And I think there's been some serious questions about the Netherlands following this game. I think there's been a bit of speculation. I know that they were the mathematicians' pick for triumphing at this summer's World Cup. And for me, this game has already exposed potentially a few weaknesses in either team, but I think the Japanese weaknesses were probably a bit better known. It feels like a lot of their performances at major international tournaments have followed a similar pattern, whereas the Dutch come in with a lot of star names, and I think many people expected them to be a lot more solid defensively. So I don't know how you guys feel about it, but for me, certainly in terms of a spectacle at least, it was certainly the game of the tournament so far.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. The first half I thought was really poor, so it did take time to get going, but the second half was really, really interesting, just from an entertainment perspective and tactical one as well. The clash of styles between the two. Netherlands were a bit more methodical, patient in the way that they built it up, whereas Japan were always going to be one of the most interesting teams from a tactical point of view, just the way that they move the ball, the way that they shift, the positions they take up, the little passing angles that they create for each other. Really, really enjoyable to watch. And I think the neutrals were probably happy when Japan did get that equaliser. And I feel like a lot of the Netherlands' errors and issues were largely self-inflicted. I think key moment was Ronald Koeman going to a back five. I think it took a little bit of solidity out the midfield. It allowed Japan a bit more space and room for those passing angles, and they dominated in areas after that. And it invited pressure on. I think it gave a lot of encouragement to Japan, and they very much deserved. I think it would have been disappointing as a spectacle point of view if they hadn't got that equaliser.
Are Japan on a par with the Netherlands then? Because the Netherlands had the advantage for most of that game. They're always seemed like one goal up on Japan. But then for Japan to pull it back to an equal result, if you like, a point each, it suggests that despite all the great celebrity and Premier League players that the Netherlands have, that actually Japan are a match for them. They're equal.
Absolutely. When you think about it, Japan coming to this tournament, no Endo from Liverpool, of course, and no Matoma from Brighton, of course. So those are two big names for those players who would start. So for them to move into this and look as good as they did in places, when, again, this is the first game of the tournament, you'd expect that they will improve and look at those little defensive naiveties that they did have. So I was really impressed by Japan, and I think they'll grow as the tournament goes on. I wouldn't go as fast as... it's funny about, people say certain teams are dark horses. I just think Japan are a good team. I wouldn't class them as a dark horse. I think we know that they are good. We know what they can do, and we know how they can rattle teams. They've done it in the past. Of course, there's a very famous game against Spain when they really went at Spain, and Spain couldn't really handle it. And you could see here that the Netherlands also couldn't handle it as well, and Japan wanted to increase that tempo, whereas, like I said, Netherlands were a bit more methodical with the way that they approach things. Japan was saying, right, we're going to increase the speed up here and try and put you in some positions that you didn't like, and they absolutely did that.
JJ, would you agree that Japan are an equal match for the Netherlands? How can that be, given the Netherlands' history in the World Cup? I think they're playing something like their 56th game at the World Cup compared to Japan. How can Japan, mighty Japan, if you like, be the equal of the Netherlands?
Well, then quite simply, as DC put it, Japan are a very good footballing side. They've just been established as a good footballing nation now for at least the last few decades. And I think many people sleep on the fact that their form overall has been very good as well. I think I read somewhere that they're on a 7 or 8 game unbeaten streak at this moment in time against some of the top names in international football. And that's not that's not fluke. That's not an accident. They are a very solid team. Like David said as well, they're missing a couple of their key pieces. There are question marks over certain areas of their game. I think it certainly struck me, the irony of the fact that the Japanese equalized with a header right at the end of the game, when physicality is not necessarily one of their strongest points. But I feel that they are able to compete and able to go toe-to-toe with some of the better footballing nations out there. And I think that they certainly deserved that point. They proved that they're ready to compete again at this World Cup. And for me, I don't consider them, like David was saying, I don't consider them a dark horse. I think that they're a known quantity. I feel that people know that they're not going to be pushovers when they come up against the Japanese. So I think it's now we've arrived at this moment where they're actually getting the respect that they deserve, and they're being taken seriously as one of the top international footballing nations.
I think one of the key things there is Japan's football development and progression. I think there were some very old cliches and stereotypes of being them basically having very good endurance levels, very good stamina, being very quick. But if you look at Japan now, they are an incredibly technically adept side. Hence why the way that they play, the way that they do, and they move the way that they do, they can shift the ball. Some of the players they've got are absolutely fantastic. You just had to look at the movement of the wing backs, the way that they worked in midfield together. They overran Netherlands at certain points, whereas an argument could be made about the Netherlands approach just appearing a little bit dated and stale at times, I think. So, you know, when we talk about the Netherlands, we obviously always talk about total football. Japan showed more total football than the Netherlands did, the team who birthed it.
It was difficult for me to pick out a standout player amongst the Dutch. Crescencio Somerville obviously scored an amazing goal. West Ham player, if he still is next season, we'll wait and see. But he scored an amazing goal, and he comes on and you think, oh, well, he's going to be the man of the match. But he didn't do much else, did he? No,
I was going to say, but I mean, I think he had his moment, and I think he did what, you know, was required. There was a particular thing when he come into the squad that Ronald Koeman's assistant, Wim Jonk, ex-chef for Wednesday, I believe, he insisted that it would be good to use Somerville off the right, and he could potentially blend well with Denzel Dumfries, who I think is the most important Dutch player. I really, really do think he's the most important player on Koeman's side. And having Somerville able to cut off that right wing and come inside was going to be a big advantage. That was what Jonk apparently convinced Koeman to do. And we saw it come to fruition. It's exactly what Somerville did. So it's an excellent moment for him, especially considering less than a month ago he was experiencing a relegation. He probably didn't expect to find himself in this position at a World Cup. Who knows if Xavi Simons was fit? Somerville might not have been in there. So he had his moments. So the rest of his game then okay, but he'll build it up, and it's going to be very important for them, whoever plays on that right, to work with Dumfries, who again I believe is the most important player in this system.
Yeah, and after this game, then up next against the mighty Sweden, JJ, the Netherlands, and we saw how they dispatched quite conclusively of Tunisia just a few hours ago, it feels like. And, well, can we expect more of that from Sweden or more of the same from the Netherlands?
It's going to be really interesting because I think that Sweden will definitely have to change the way that they approach the game. I think, with all due respect, yes, it was a very impressive showing from Sweden. Scored a handful of really, really good goals, especially that second Ayari strike. But for me, I feel that they were gifted a few of their goals by a very poor Tunisian side. And I think as well for the Dutch, the key question that comes out of that game against Japan, for me, circles around the midfield three. It felt a bit too static for my liking with De Jong, Reinders, and also Gravenberch. So I'm curious to see if Koeman potentially changes it up, maybe only goes with two of those three, or if he does persevere with the three, I think he'll certainly expect more movement, more fluency from them, because I think when you've got a trio of players as impressive as those three, I think you certainly expect more from them, because at times it felt like their static positions on the pitch enabled Japan to run rings around them at times. So I think that's definitely something that's going to have to change. But I think if Sweden have already got the taste for goals after that game against Tunisia, then it's potentially a risk for the Netherlands, because I really did expect the Dutch defence to be more solid than it was. And I think this is now a huge opportunity for Sweden, who, let's face it, after a couple of really difficult years on the international scene, needed a bit of a confidence boost. They have that now with this result. And suddenly you look at those attacking players that they're able to put out, Gyökeres and Isaac both getting on the score sheet against Tunisia. that's a huge shot in the arm for them ahead of what could be a really tricky game. And Sweden traditionally in these international tournaments are one of those kind of bogey teams. And if the Dutch suddenly fail to beat Sweden, the alarm bells could start ringing for Koeman.
Yeah, Lindelof pretty much echoed what Jonathan said about the strike force after the game, and he said he wouldn't exchange them for any other duo in the tournament, in referring to Gyökeres and Isak. And yeah, Isak, remember him? So he came up with a nice little reminder of who he is, what he's capable of, and I think there'll be a different approach, like Jonathan has said. But this is what happens. I mean, with the tournament and the way it is in terms of third going through, removing that level of jeopardy, you can win that first game, and then the rest of the group stage is kind of your oyster. So they can go in from a position to the next game, just with a game against the Netherlands, basically just saying, okay, you come on to us. We've got a win in the bag. We've got 5 goals as well. We're in a brilliant position right now. You need to come at us. And that could cause the Netherlands a lot of problems, especially if they're pushing on through their fullbacks that they like to do. Sweden can go, oh, this is ideal for us. We can just play on the break with Gyökeres and Isak and Ayari, who's clearly very happy to get forward as well.